Manny Collins here for Imagine Crafts. Today we'll be creating this Valentine's Day card. Let's go over the products I used to create this card. I used the Creative Medium Iridescent in pink, and this is a texture paste. A Memento Dewdrop inks in Angel Pink, Lilac Posies, Sweet Plum, Elderberry, and a splash of grape jelly. I used a little drop of Delicata re-inker in pink shimmer, the Shimmer craft spray in sparkle, this die from Cheery design called Be My Valentine, the stamp from Rinea called Almost Postcard, and it's basically a scripty background stamp. This stencil called Falling Hearts, and this is from Stampin' Up, and I believe this is discontinued, but any heart stencil will be fine. I'll find something similar and link it below. Now let's go over the paper. I have a small piece of Strathmore cold pressed watercolor paper. If you don't have watercolor paper, you can use a thick cardstock that you know can withstand. Let's put that withstand some water. A panel that's been cut down with a stitch die cut, and this is what we'll be stamping and using our stencil on. Layering cardstock 65 weight in a nice lavender, and it's A2 side folding card, and that's 110 pounds. We'll be bringing in some little gems here, little heart gems to decorate our card. Alright, so let me clear our desk here and we can get started on our project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp this scripty background stamp onto our card panel. And I used the Angel Pink because I want it to be just subtle enough that you can see it, but it's nothing really that you need to read. Now I'm going to adhere our stencil to our panel, and I'm going to use some masking tape just to hold it in place. If you have pixie spray, you can use that, but I don't have any at the moment. Alright, so now we're going to pull out some of our texture paste. And I like to use a little peel and press here to keep it nice and moist. So I'm just going to scoop a little bit out. And now I wanted to show you that the sheer shimmer spray, it dries like a pearlescent with a nice pink in it. So it looks like mother of pearl, really. So it's beautiful. However, I wanted it to be a little more pink to just stand out more on top of that angel pink stamping I did. So this is where I bring in our Delicata re-inker in pink shimmer, and I put one drop into the texture paste, the Creative Medium paste. And here I'm just going to mix it. And you mix it like you would if you're coloring frosting, let's say. It has the same consistency as that. So you just mix it. I just scrape it and mix it, scrape and mix till I get it all blended completely. Then I scoop as much of it up as I can. And then I'm going to apply this to our panel via the stencil. So I'm just going to go ahead and place this onto our stencil and try to put it as smooth and as thin as possible, because the thicker it is, the longer it will take to dry. And for this project, I didn't want it really thick. And I'm using a small spatula, that's why I'm scraping it on several times. I'm swiping it on. But if you have a bigger spatula, you can just do it one big swipe. Alright, so now I'm going to take off my panel and remove our stencil. And please make sure you wash your stencil and your spatula after you're done putting your Creative Medium onto your project. I'm going to wipe my edges in case there's any extra. And then I'm going to set this to the side. As you can see, all that beautiful shimmer right there. I'm going to let that dry. So now we're going to work on our watercolor panel. We're going to bring in our shades of purple that we have over here. We're going to start with our Elderberry. So we're doing sort of an ombre, from darkest to lightest. And we're going to water down our color that we just pushed down onto our palette here with the sheer Shimmer craft spray in sparkle. And I'm gonna just moisten my watercolor card panel here with a little bit of water, just clear water. And I wiped off any extra because I don't want it to be super wet, but I want it to be somewhat wet so that this ink will just flow easier. I'm just gonna brush it on. Then I move on to the next color. Do the same thing, smush it onto the panel, onto my palette. Into my palette. Mix it with the sheer shimmer spray and brush it on. And then I'll go back and forth until I get those colors blended because I don't want it to be a straight line. So I go between the colors, I mix each a little bit more, keep blending them through. And now I'm going to move on to my Lilac Posies. Do the same thing, add the little shimmer spray, mix it. And then I'm going to add a little bit more water because my panel was a bit dry and I want it to, I add the water so it makes it easier as well for it to blend between the colors. And I just keep doing that until the panel is completely covered. And I just keep going back and forth until I have a nice blend. And once I have that done, I will clear my palette and move on to the next step. Just a few more drops here. I lost a lot of the sweet plum, so I wanted to bring that back in. There we go. There's our panel. So now we're going to bring in the grape jelly. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add a little, but this time I'm going to add a splash of water because I want this to be really watery. So I have the sheer shimmer and water to this one. And I'm just going to splash it or sprinkle it onto my panel. But since my panel was still wet, it just kind of started blending into the background. So I just grabbed my heat tool and just give it a quick heat. And then I repeated the process. And now the darker purple is really shining through. Now, if you don't like to do those splatters, you can of course do the dip method. Just dip your panel straight into the ink. I just figured I wanted smaller splashes, so I just stuck my paintbrush in there. And you can use any size paintbrush here. I just grabbed the smallest one I had on my desk at the point. Alright, so now I'm going to die cut this panel, now that it's dry. I'm going to run it through my mini maker. And I'm going to save that piece that I die cut the heart from. It'll be great for another project. So now here's our panel all die cut. It says, Be My Valentine. And you can see all the nice shimmer and shine here. But it's not overwhelming shimmer and shine. It's just nice and subtle. So that the texture paste, or the creative medium paste, I should say, hearts show through. Alright, so I adhere my lilac panel to my card base. Now I'm going to adhere the panel with the shiny hearts here. I'm going to use a little bit of foam adhesive on the back because I want it to be raised but not super high. So this is a low profile tape, a foam tape. And then I'm going to adhere this, centering it on our card base. Trying to center it on our card base. Okay, I need to move the palette out of my way so I can use my grid mat to make sure I'm centered. There. Plus it was moving all over the place. Okay, so now that I have that on there, I'm going to adhere the watercolor panel or the heart. And I'm trying to figure out where I want it. Do I want it higher, lower, or more in the center? Figured out center. So I'm going to bring in my on point glue. And I'm just going to put little dots on the back of this. Since this is watercolor paper, this on point glue, which is nice and thick, and it will keep it and set it really nicely. And it will prevent it from buckling. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little more drops here. Get it centered onto my panel. And to hold it in place while it dries, which won't take very long, I'm just going to put a little acrylic block on top. Just give that a moment, and that gives me a moment to just clear some of the stuff off. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and bring in our hearts. And I'm going to play around, see where I want them. I want these two here, but I don't want the purple too close to the purple, so I'm going to rearrange that a bit. I play around with it until I get how I want. I'm going to put 3 towards the bottom. Thought of putting 3 on top, but it just looked kind of too busy for me up there. So I went with 3 on the bottom left and 2 on the top right. So then I'll get my on point glue and I'll adhere these little hearts to it. Our card panel here. And I'm just going to put a little drop and then place my heart on top. And now I'll repeat the process on the hearts on the bottom. And there you go, our card is done once our hearts are set. And you can see all the shimmer from the little heart jewels, the beautiful shimmer that you get in the background from the iridescent creative paste, and then there's some nice texture and dimension from it, but not so much. You have some nice texture and dimension from the die cut as well. So we used a stencil with our creative medium paste. We used the Delicata to darken our paste there, the Delicata in pink shimmer. We used this die cut and Memento inks in Grape Jelly, Lilac Posies, Sweet Plum, and Elderberry. And of course our sheer shimmer spray and sparkle. Our on point glue to adhere our panels together, and as well as our jewels. Like always, I'll have everything in the description box below if you missed anything I said as quickly here, and links to all the products. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you found some inspiration.